Okay. I think the sound was pretty good when I just did a recording here. So hope everyone is doing well today. I'm going to jump into this one just like I've done with a few other videos. So this is a little bit of a different pace. But I'm also going to try to be intentional with my thoughts and be aware of your time all at once. I have a timer going. But these series are meant to be a little more meditative for us to slow down and think about some topics in a deeper dialogue, maybe inner and outer, once we start conversing with others about them. So it's not the, 10-second video, the clip that you would go to watch. Maybe one day I'll make clips and make the longer videos more attractive. Also, want to reiterate on here that I won't be doing any editing. So if I sound, all over the place, that's part of what it is. It's your choice whether you want to engage with it or not. You have that choice. So I made a title for today's episode. It's called Expanding My Perspectives and Horizons, which from my perspective, I think humanity needs to do this more. I think that we are, as mentioned in other videos, in different words at times. I think we are not using our greatest gift, this higher level of consciousness, for the better. I think we're doing it for greed right now, overall. I think we are not acknowledging how cyclical warfare occurs. There isn't a global conversation on trying to end the us versus them. Some people might watch this and say that this is, utopian, naive perspective, but I think it still needs to be brought up anyway. But I don't want to get too far off track here. I want to get it solidified for things that we can apply to ourselves, not selfishly, but so that there's more like of a tangible step that a person could maybe look at to analyze. Because you're not going to solve the war in Ukraine and Russia tomorrow by yourself, unless you found the magic bullet, so to speak. I'll start with culture. Any person who has thoroughly engaged in various genres of literature and music, types of movies, uh, other forms of entertainment that you could engage yourself with. I can't express the amazing world, the plethora of topics and types of genres you could go into if you simply can get past your early conditioning to favor certain genres over others. If you were fortunate enough to grow up in a household that valued all music and you listened to many different genres, you had a very fortunate scenario in that regard with the people, the elders that were, having you engage with this kind of material. I understand why we have our idiosyncrasies in the parts of culture we like, the genre of music that I listen to and my friends listen to, and we bond over: rap, rock, country, jazz, techno, whatever it is, right? I understand that certain genres of books uh, become more appealing to us as we get older and we come to say, this is the genre I really like: science fiction, romance, nonfiction, fiction, poetry, historical, self-help, religious, whichever it might be, right? And it's not surprising that we develop those certain, perspectives, part of the title, right? Perspectives and horizons, because there's only so much information we can intake at one time. And there is such a thing as information overload. I'm in a career education where there's been several times where I was sitting there and I was like, there's too many things going on. We need to slow this down. If you know someone in education today, you know that there are state standards There are often standards related to your individual discipline, history, science, math, English, etc. There are the standards that are done at the school, often the school or district level. And yeah, it just becomes a lot. And that I don't want to talk more about it with education in this podcast. But there can be an overwhelming of too many ideas. Fully want to admit that. To where you're engaged in so many different topics that you feel almost restless, and you want something to occupy your mind, because that would be antithetical to true meditation and slowing down. Just realizing now in real time, as I was speaking faster the last 2 minutes or so, that I really needed to slow back down. But I'll close the culture part to say I can't express to you in words enough how beneficial my exploration of poets from around the world, different cultures, and how they developed their given ideologies and their histories and their mythologies and traditions. And also really musical genres, just to hear music from different genres. There are still some that I'm not really a fan of, but when I opened up to the beauty within each one, the tempos, what was being said in certain messages, the way the vibrations of the music might make you feel, especially if you need some music to calm the entirety of your being, because a lot of the rest of the music makes you move, which is fine. But can we go inward and slow down? When you do that and you go to engage with different genres of music, reading, etc., a world opens up that has so much transformative power. I can't express to you how enlightening it might be. Not enlightenment, but have enlightening qualities. I'll just give you a quick example. Hafiz, Hafiz, is a poet from Persia, 13th or 14th century. No, 13th would have been 1200s. I think he was 14th, 15th century in Persia. Recorded many thousands of poems, but many of them were lost over time. I want to say he still has a couple of thousand that, reached the modern day. So roughly 600 years ago, 700 years ago, give or take, right? Hafiz is one of the authors who legitimately helped me go into an understanding that my perspectives, sorry, even as our opinions can be subjective, right? My perspectives and horizons were not only partially culturally constructed, but the fact that, again, there are worlds that are just waiting for you to explore, not in thought to the point like I made a minute ago where you go crazy, but enough in thought to where the routines and habits that you regularly engage with, some of which are extremely destructive, like self-criticism to the point of where you're a self-critic with every move you do in your life. And you're trying to be better, but trauma, pain, suffering, something from the past, a current medical condition that just takes all of your energy, right? You want to use all resources available to you in order to find a calmer state of being. And the perspective and horizon line that Hafiz not challenged me, but offered to change with his poetry from 600 years ago. It was a weight that came off the shoulders. It was a freedom I didn't know I needed. It was an ability to understand that this, not all, but a decent portion of it, is what makes our reality. If you don't want to claim all, because that scares you to make absolutes. Enough of what we create in this reality comes from up here, right? And sometimes it benefits us because you need some foundation, you need some form of discipline, you need a singular path, something to act on. You can't think about 1,000 things. You have to like make a decision, admittedly. You can think your way into insanity. And when I say insanity, I don't mean to downplay it for anyone who is suffering from a given mental condition. I mean to say that your indecisiveness can occur from too much rumination. Rumination, is that the right word? Look it up. I think it is. If it's constantly going up here. But I, again, owe so much gratitude to my willingness finally in life at some point to really open up the doors to other perspectives, to finding a kind of internal peace, which was really needed. Now, a person might watch this and say, well, why didn't you just open this verse of the Bible? Or, if you weren't like a, if you weren't a political insert derogatory term towards the left or right, maybe you'd understand what life is about. And by the way, when I give the religious or political example, we do realize that elders around the world do this at times where they think they know better and they will have you believe what they believe. And I want to be clear as I just said this, because I also talked about this in my last video. Elders are amazing, as are young people. Elders offer us the opportunity to understand how the world previously was before we were here. They offer us wisdom from time and time again that can prove to help the human condition in some regard, right? Hafiz, I consider Hafiz an elder, even though I never met him. And even if we were both alive at the same time, we wouldn't have spoken the same language. But then again, for him, he's speaking, I think, a language of the soul, if you will, if we have one, the spirit, whatever else it might be. So I want to be very clear. This is not a continual knock on elders. It is an examination. It's an examination of where our current perspectives and horizons lines are in humanity and within ourselves, because that's the real experience we can see is our own self, right? It's impossible for me to actually see it from another person's, body and their perspective, but I can empathize and walk a mile in their shoes type of thing to understand. But it's a critique to say that most things have flaws. And it's not, again, to go flaw, fault to the point of where you believe nothing, because that can lead to chaos. A vacuum of everything pulled out, and now you're just left. Although you could argue that thinking from Krishnamurti's perspective is part of the problem, because we don't slow down enough. No, it's a desire to understand the full of the human condition, to analyze things that might truly be helpful for us that we have in current society, beliefs, traditions, cultural norms, collected wisdom on economics, for modern economics, to know how the system will react to certain things that occur, right? Like the toilet paper shortage. But it's to say that we don't have to be afraid of questioning those things. And if you want to go for the big picture, you're like, why would you, how much are you going to question and what are you going to question? And I realize I'm already at 15 minutes. Part of what I think a person should be allowed to do is the self-exploration. And when I say self-exploration, I mean to say understanding who you are as a person, what you've come to be, what good things have happened in your past, what good fortunes have you had, what things have affected you to where you think about them today and they cause you pain. And for some people, the perspective is simply pain, which can you think that thought and not judge yourself, right? This might be a little better of a example if you're, tripping on the critique of elders and their influence in society. Sorry, I'm making you trip on that. It's not my intention. The person is currently suffering over something. We know that suppressing those feelings generally doesn't lead to good things. I wish every man in human existence could understand that, so that more and more individuals had the courage to say, hey, like, it's not good to, like, stuff things down. You might have had to do it for war or whatever other scenario you might have been in, but the science is in. It's not healthy to do that. Bits of anger and rage that you haven't processed. And I always say this in videos like this: if you need help, go get help. There are people that care about you. But to the individual who is not able to self-explore and is so scared about cultural conditioning of being perfect, being viewed as perfect from the outside, being viewed as like the most eligible bachelorette or bachelor if they're not, already partnered with somebody. There's a lot to say to that. Or if you have a friend group, you have that one person who never stops talking. Do they need to be the center of attention? That one's hard, especially if you come to realize that might be you some of the time. Why do you need all that attention? Can you slow down and let other people think, or not think, speak and contribute? I don't necessarily agree or like the sentiment that the phrase "don't be a victim." You've heard that in some bootstraps circles. Don't be a victim. Don't be a victim. I'm not sure I really like that phrase. I understand the sentiment that a person's trying to do with that given mentality and to pull themselves out of, said suffering. But I think it's the wrong approach. I think it's forcing more thought. In my studies, trying to expand horizon lines, many of the best wisdoms from around the world that I've engaged with have said it's not a thing of more fire with fire, because you end up burning your brain out. You can literally think yourself into many types of scenarios where pain and suffering are exacerbated. And it's not to say the pain isn't there, because it is. We've all had life events that have really hurt us and we're trying to, we're trying to walk through them. It is to say, though, that you are allowed the permission to investigate, why are these thoughts coming up? Why are they there? Do my thoughts come from reactions to outside sources? And was I thinking something about a past event where pain was caused, and now I'm 10 thoughts down that path, and I'm in a deep, dark, monster-filled cave because of the 10 thoughts from that event that happened 5 years ago that I just can't let go of? Can you let that shizo go without judging yourself? You know why forgiveness is so hard? I feel like part of it, maybe not all, but part of it is we feel like we're going to lose. We are going to lose something. Our ego, our sense of safety, our position in the world, whatever else it might be. The rest of human society, or most of human society, I would argue, doesn't believe that forgiveness is a real thing. How many people do you know that can actually say, I'm sorry, and mean it? Used to be there. Still there to a certain degree. Not perfect. Now we're at 20 minutes. Okay, I'll try to wrap this up in 2 to 3 to 4. Does it make sense with that idea? Forgiveness is a tool that you can use to slow down and let pain come to the dinner table and just be there with it, calm and collected. Let it come in. What can happen when that occurs? The pain and suffering want to attach to our thoughts and perpetuate in the cycle because it feeds part of the ego and some part of our biochemistry, right? Some part of it, our evolutionary chemistry, if you will, going back thousands of years, which says forgiveness is not a real thing. I'm allowed to self-protect and just be all the time. You can do what you want. You're an independent person. I don't know about free will. I don't want to talk about it here. Sam Harris and other people have a lot of things to say about it. I'd be down for a discussion, but I would say that there is enough of human consciousness where if you have the courage to consider the fact that you've always thought compassion and forgiveness are weaknesses, not strengths that are harder for they are harder to engage with because they often are not the first response of many people's mindsets. A person might say, well, what happens if I forgive and that person, who hurt me in the past, maybe they're still around and they go to do it again? It's not forgive and forget. Remember the lesson when a person shows you who they are and they're unwilling to reflect and improve upon their own shizo behavior. It's slowing down enough to know that expanding my perspectives and horizon lines can only ultimately help me as an individual. And it's hard to accept that when the idea we have formed about ourselves is so strong. Maybe there is a part of your entire psyche, your entire being, that has been formed by a traumatic event. maybe one you don't even know about, or it's been formed by years of believing something about yourself, right? If you've had really bad luck in relationships and you were really trying to be a good person, do you come to the realization, oh, but I never set boundaries? And that is not blaming the victim of real life scenarios that they engage with, like assault. Okay. That's not blaming them. It is trying to offer a tool to any person who can't get a certain job they're looking for, who has someone within their family or friend group that is always toxic towards them and they feel powerlessness. Like if you're dealing with a true gaslighter and they want you to automatically agree with what they agree with. But let's not end this in an aggressive, anger-filled reflection on suffering. My perspectives and horizon lines changed for the better when I explored consciousness, did not judge myself for my own shortcomings, which I have many, accepted where I was, and when the negative thought patterns and thoughts continued to arise, I allowed them in, and maybe not all of them disappeared, because some suffering, pain, and trauma could be with us for our life. But enough of it started to dissipate and things just cleared. If they don't clear, do I have the stamina to look at it and say, am I just being stubborn? Did I grow up in a household where yelling was the normal way people communicated? Do I have a group of friends where the conversation is always like, I don't want to say derogatory, but it's never very productive? And that's not to say that you have to have a group of friends that are always challenging you to do better, but who you surround yourself with, what things you tolerate as much as you can. If you live, with your family or whatnot, and you don't have your own place, that can be challenging. But it's not to break and destroy any foundations. It's to say that you're allowed to question stuff. But if you do it demanding a result, or if you do it, oh, I really, really want the end of my suffering. I want suffering to be over forever. Do you realize that part of our life is the words we say and where our thoughts come from? Am I the thinker of my thoughts? Or do I get lost in thought and I can't slow down enough to observe them? This is at 30 minutes now, but I think I really got on a roll in the last 12 to 10 minutes. So I hope this has been helpful. But I will close up. This is not a dogmatic plea that you must expand your perspectives and your horizon lines. You aren't a bad person if you're in a rut and you're trying to figure a way out. It's just the offering that you don't need the world's or life's permission to face the demons and question them. You might need some help with tools to understand physiological responses and things that truly are beyond your control in biochemistry, where maybe you have some kind of mental or physical pain that can't go away, in which case, get professional help, 100%. But it's just so you know that another person is going through these kind of thoughts and is wanting to allow the permission for you to explore it. Not for greed, not for trying to be the next billionaire, the biggest influencer. That would defeat the purpose. You think you want $1 billion. Are you willing to do all the steps to go there? Is $1 billion going to make you happy? Or what about 2 billion? Be careful with greed. It can enrapture you and you can be lost. Everyone's got to have a house and place to live. That's not the point. Be cautious, but also be willing to explore. And now I've already gone back and forth in my own head, getting off the point there. But I hope this has been helpful. Would love your feedback. Be well.